She's not here anymore. She was as of the end of last year.
Oh, I know she's been playing the synth, I'm sure.
She's not here this week. She's not playing this week.
Oh, they may be information.
For Carl.
Check. I was supposed to go to South Dakota with my son.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lindsay Bartlett, president of the LMTA board. We're excited you're here. Welcoming Clark. Very exciting to have you here this morning. This is actually his second time supporting LMTA already this semester. He was a clinician, we'd say, for a mock all-state audition and masterclass that Lisa and I co-organized here just
fiddles and flutes and playing viola.
Yeah, it was a good time. I had 3 students participate, and they all still had wonderful experience. So thank you very much for that and for your time this morning. And we'll jump right in. Thank you.
I'm thrilled to let you know about one of the best composers that you've never heard of today. And her name is Rebecca Clark, and she was a British composer, died in 1979 in her 90s. And she was, to call her something of a trailblazer would be an understatement. For one thing, she was one of the first, if not the first, one of 2 of the first professional orchestra players in London ever around 1912. I mean, realize the Vienna Phil didn't have a female member until the years started with 20. So quite something. And she also went on to found her own ensembles of female artists and musicians. She toured Europe with a trio of people, a pianist, a cellist, and also did quite a bit with a singer. And so she if she had written symphonies, you would all know her name. The world would know her name. But she wrote mostly wonderful viola music. And then she also wrote some music for violin, quite a number of songs. She has a piano piece that I don't know personally, but a theme and variations that apparently comes highly recommended by her biographers and critics. And she also has a piano trio, which is spectacular. She wrote it as a young lady, and it's quite a mature work. She came to America. First of all, she studied at the Royal Conservatory, and at one point she came to America. There's a lot I could tell you about her upbringing. Her father was not the nicest person in the world. You can read all about that, but she came to America and got stuck here because of the war. And she ended up staying. She ended up running on a New York street. She ran into a former classmate of hers at the Royal Conservatory of Music, and they ended up getting married. And James Friskin was his name, a composer also, actually a Scottish composer. And they met in New York, got married, and mostly lived happily ever after. Friskin actually wrote some music for her as well, which has survived. And someday I'm going to do a Rebecca Clark and James Friskin recital because, as I say, there's plenty of music by her for viola, including a piece that Ed and I were just talking about. Allegro, I'm going to get Pastoral and for viola and clarinet, which is a terrific piece and needs to be played more. But her most famous piece is probably the Viola Sonata. And she wrote this for a competition, and she entered it. There were some like 85 compositions in this, and this was 1919. And it was tied for first with a piece by Ernest Bloch. And the panel knew that a woman couldn't possibly have written a piece so extraordinary. And so they assumed it had to have been an alias, and they actually thought it was Bloch. So they said, well, let's give Bloch the first prize. So he got the first prize. Believe it or not, after the tie goes to the male, I guess. But anyway, this viola, all violists know this piece. It's just an extraordinary work. but she also wrote a bunch of mini pieces. A lot of those were when she was young, including the one we're going to play today. Elizabeth Grimpo gratefully is playing along today with a piece called Passacaglia on an old English tune, and it's a tune by Thomas Tallis. And the interesting interweaving parts here are just a taste of what you'll find in the concerto. There's a lot in the. I wish there was a concerto. Then everybody, yeah, lots of other people would know her name too. In the sonata, which has a lot of French influences. And anyway, I think you'll enjoy the Passacaglia. encourage you to stock some of her other pieces, just because they're worth it and they need to be heard, and it's great art. So I'm not here to talk about her, but it's fun too. I'm here to give a little bit of history about the Nebraska Chamber Players, and I actually have brochures for this season. Could I have you put some? And you can, so if you get bored with what I say, you can always read. So I am here today in place of Becky Vandebogart, who is unable to be here today and is the brains and the heart and soul of this group for decades, literally. And this is, I think, the 26th or 27th year. It gets a little fuzzy because of COVID, how we count seasons. But we have celebrated a 25th year. I've played in all but 2 of them. I didn't play the first year, or maybe I did. And then I didn't play last year because I had conflicts with every single weekend where they had performances. My first concert was in this room. Bud and Emil both conducted and performed in that. So I think I might have been the first year. According to Becky, the first year, this was the home of the year. So I think at some point I joined the party. I know that I did the next year. We were in the 7th Street Loft, which was I'm not even sure that space still exists. If you drive under, it does? Okay, good. If you drive under the overpass downtown, not far from 7th Street, there was a building, and upstairs in the building was this kind of a black box room, a warehouse sort of place, and that was our home for quite a while. And I think the reason why I got asked to do this was because I played violin as a lad, and they needed someone to play the violin/viola part for Pierrot Lunaire by Schoenberg. And so that was the first concert that I distinctly remember exactly what the music was. We also played a piece by Randy Snyder called The Patagonian Express, which I've always loved. A lot of things are fuzzy about the group, my participation, but anyway. Other people that you may know who have been in this group for a long time, and the first name on the list is Ed Love. Wave to the crowd, Ed. Ed and I have collaborated a lot over the years and enjoyed each other's playing and been a part of this group. Ed may have been from the very beginning, so he predates me in this group, but here I am talking. But other people, Sherry Erickson, pianist, whom I assume many of you probably know, who passed away in 2014. Tracy Sands, cello. Donna Carnes, violin. Helen Pridmore, voice. Chantry Nelson, oboe and English horn. Bobby Jenkins played some time with us. Oboe and English horn. Tammy Osborne Peterson. Some of you will remember Tammy. Karen Sandine in the early years, more on her in a bit. Vina Alicio, board president and singer with us. Graham House horn. Rick Rickerhorn. Joe Holmquist, percussion, also known as Tristan Puentes. That was his composition alias. By the way, Rebecca Clark used an alias in one of her programs where she was playing with May Mukel, a cellist, and a pianist, I can't remember. She had one of her pieces on the program, and she said it was by Anthony Trent. And of course, that was the one that got all the attention from the critic. This fabulous piece by Anthony Trent. We don't know anything about him. So anyway, Joe Holmquist used Tristan Puentes as his composition name because he wrote some pieces for us. Other composers, Rusty Banks, Chris Ellenwood, undoubtedly many of you probably know Sandy. Rusty also played guitar with us. Randy Snyder, Mark Matejka early on as cello, Jeff Campbell, bassoon player, Rusty White, bass. Katie Whitechulis has been playing for quite a while on horn. So these are, what names am I forgetting?
Well, you just said Katie played horn.
Oh, no, she plays harp. What a silly thing, Ed. Why would you say something like that? Sorry. Maybe she does play horn. She played violin, actually, is what she played before she switched to harp while she was at college. You should try harp, they said. Okay. So the beginning of the this ensemble came in a cold February morning in the Malcolm High School parking lot. Karen Sandine, bassoon player, and Becky were having a disgruntled conversation about the state of things with the orchestra, Lincoln Symphony. So Becky was third flute or piccolo. Karen Sandine was third bassoon, which almost never happens, and contrabassoon, which happens slightly more frequently than third bassoon, but not a lot. So they were lamenting the lack of opportunities for them to play, and they want to play. And one of them said, well, we should just start a chamber group. And that was the beginning of it. So the name early on reflects that situation, the third chair chamber players. And I loved that name. I love that name. And some of the insignias along the way that came, the drawings and paintings that people would do about 3 chairs and things like I still have. I do. I still have one. Fear no music, this postcard says. I can't tell you what year this was, but anyway, there are 3 chairs there in that little thing. So, we love that name. So, because of budgets and orchestras and things that, of course, people still face largely, those third chair people weren't always needed, so this group was born. So the beginning, this happened in 1996, and in 1997 in the fall launched the third chair chamber players. If Becky were here, she would talk about things like logistics. Finding a place to play is, of course, just part of it. Picking who to ask to play, and sometimes probably mistakes were made along the way, right? Ed can fill in some blanks for me. Not with you, of course, but with one thing is that we have never been a traditional group in terms of orchestration. It's not a string quartet. It's 10 or 11 members, right? We have a lot of the orchestral instruments are represented, but that means we don't play string quartets. I'm not sure in 25 years there's been a string quartet, which is one of the most popular types of ensembles ever, right? But there also was a string quartet, rather prominent one in this town for 13 years. And it didn't make sense to play string quartets when they were here. And we just haven't ever. We also play music that is a little bit off the beaten track. And things by composers you may not have heard, or pieces by composers that you may have heard of the composer but not the works. I don't believe we've ever done Eine kleine Nachtmusik by Mozart. I don't think we do. We can do lesser known pieces by famous composers, but we really don't do a lot of that. But anyway, repertoire. We don't have a traditional group. That means you can come up with all sorts of wonderful combinations and find obscure pieces that work for that combination. So deciding repertoire, I think that's part of the fun of being a music director, and I think that's part of what fun Becky has had all these years, choosing music for her. She always asks, okay, what ideas do you have? And then Ed and I were talking right before this meeting. Well, we made a suggestion to her, but it didn't seem to show up on the roster, and which is fine. That's kind of what happens, and so maybe next year. Other issues like then when you decide on repertoire, how do you get the music? How do you purchase it? There are libraries. I was frequently asked to raid the University of Nebraska School of Music Library, which is where I work. And so, well, the School of Music, not the library, you understand. But interlibrary loan was a place. Now IMSLP is a huge resource. I assume it is for all of us. So getting music, some of us owned it. Some of it we never got back. You know how this goes. Becky started photocopying parts she gave out so that she wouldn't lose them, which is sort of just part of people being funny. Okay, and then coming up with the philosophy of what do you want this group to be like? What should it be known for? We'll talk more about that a little bit later. People weren't paid, apparently, immediately, right away. I mean, in other words, early on, were we going to pay people or not? Most of the players were union players, And the union looks askance at those of us who would play for nothing, because in a sense we would be taking work away from someone who would be making money. And I'm a card-carrying union member, so it's this is not a subject that's far from me. And then, so Karen, bassoonist, and Becky figured out ways for a while to how to share duties and who would take care of what and when. Eventually, they moved into separate things, and Karen decided to move away from the third chair chamber players. So Becky, ever since then, has been the as I say, the heart and soul of this group. How do we finance this? Apparently, about 7% of the costs of the group come from ticket sales. Not a huge amount. So you have to figure out other ways to do this, right? So we have donors. She started selling season tickets and then passes and then grants. Grants came from the Nebraska Arts Council, the State Endowment for the Arts, private grants and donors, grant writing, and then just friends. And I think Becky financed a lot herself and to make it work. I don't believe I was ever not paid. I'm certain I was always paid for every performance that we did, and Ed's nodding his head, which is fabulous and a little bit miraculous if you consider that only 7% of the costs are borne by ticket sales. Even things like whose signature is on the bank account card, right? All these things that you have to think about. So they came up with a mission statement. It's long, so try to stay awake. Are you ready? To spread the joy of chamber music. That is the mission statement. There's a few more bullet points that go with it, like by presenting concerts in which the audience and the musicians are in the same space, not separated by a stage or a platform. Providing educational programs and informances to better enable audience participation, and presenting superior quality performances that highlight the diversity of chamber music. I remember one particular time we were doing mentors in the schools, and I was asked if I would be willing to go spend 5 Wednesday afternoons at Leffler Middle School to work with really young string players and do chamber music with them. And I said, I really don't want to do this. But I went home and I said to Jan, so with the money I make from this, because this came from grant money, I said, how about if I buy a bicycle? And she says, that's a great idea. So I started showing up at Leffler Middle School one day a week for only 5 weeks. And of course I had a wonderful time, and the kids were great. This is just an example of the sort of thing that TCCP and now NCP has done to be out in the community and out in the schools. And so I applaud that sort of thing. And yes, I got a bike, and I had a good time. At some point along the line, maybe you can help with when, Ed, but the board, of course, that's another thing, having a board, right? And who would serve on it, and what are their duties? Are they a give or get off the board? Are they a serve or give board? You know what I mean? In other words, some board members, you have to donate to be a board member, or you have to serve. And so what is the board going to be like, and how does all that happen? Well, at some point, the board took the horn by grabbed the bull by the horns and decided that we needed a name change, that maybe there was something derogatory about third chair chamber players. Maybe we didn't think very highly of ourselves. Maybe we thought, well, the first chair players have their thing, and then we have our thing. So the name was changed to the Nebraska Chamber Players, which is fine. I really thought the quirky name kind of fit the quirky music that we did, but it was okay. The Nebraska Chamber Players was born whenever that was. And things have worked quite nicely. It's made my life a little bit confusing because I was also a member of a quintet called the Trans-Nebraska Players, and we were named ours before this one changed. My quintet members, no, we're not changing our name, because I tried to, can we come up with something different? No. So I'm in the Nebraska Chamber Players and the Trans-Nebraska Players, and if you think it's confusing for you, just think of the other people in my household. Okay, becoming a nonprofit, 501c3, and all that is involved with that. I've done that with the Youth Symphony, which I direct, and I know what's involved with that. It's a significant undertaking, but of course, once you are approved, it allows for other kinds of grants and possibilities that are great. But for each one of these, you have to learn the rules, how to accept donations, accountability to the donors, all of these things. You have to oversee it. Somebody has to write them. I'm probably scaring you off from ever having an organization of this on your own. But nonetheless, this is what's involved with the sorts of things that go on. Accounting, financial statements, starting a board. What is your niche? That's an interesting question. And I talked a little bit about it already. We're trying to do concerts in unusual places, right? Because over the years, as I say, we were in this room, and we're back in this room. This is now the new home of the Chamber Players. But we are also 7th Street Loft, the loft at the Mill. Did you know there's a space above the Mill, 8th and P? And then we were at NET for quite a while. Had to be quite a while. They were not only our home, but they were partners with us and still are partners with us in terms of helping get the word out about concerts. We put ads on there, and they also recorded all our concerts for a long, long time. And occasionally you'd hear one on Nebraska performances on public radio. So they were huge. And all of these places then were not normal places to perform. And I think that with the quirky music is part of a niche. I think that has worked really well. Ticket prices have remained low. Students can come here for a slight donation. And she also started the Red Dot program so that a student with one of these postcards with the red dot or not, if I forgot my Red Dot card, that's okay. This means if you bring 2 students getting it in for a total of $5. This is college students, high school students, whatever. A fabulous program. And I did hear a story about Ann Chang came to a concert of this group, and there was one of our people was sort of fierce at the table, and Ann forgot her pass, and he would not let her into the concert. I'm not sure Ann came back. But anyway, some things happen, right? We have to have understandings between the ticket takers and, yeah. So, and of course, Becky has been the flute player for this group for so long. And so she's also running around trying to get ready to play. She's with the food. She's with, Kasha Bradley for years has been the kind of the caterer for our events. So there's always great food. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Understanding the rules of video and audio recording. I mean, just laws have changed so drastically. Posting something on the World Wide Web is more complicated than, all these things that we have to keep track of and make sure we're doing within the bounds of the law and fairness. Budgets. How do you create a budget? So you have musicians who sometimes travel. Do we pay? Katie White-Chulis is from Omaha, harpist. And there are others who travel, of course. And so how do we get, sometimes people come in from a ways away. Rusty Banks came, Christy Banks, came from a great distance. Chris Ellenwood's coming. You'll see on the brochure that we're doing a concert of his works. So how do we do travel? How's that done? And frankly, I don't even know, since I didn't have to worry about that. I haven't, because I live right here in town. However, we've also performed concerts around the state. We did one in Alma. I'm saying it correctly. I didn't know how to say it till I was there. And we were there while the pelicans were, so we went out to the lake and saw the pelicans, so that was pretty fun. I'm going to forget a few. Minden, Kearney, yes, we did concert at the kind of the World Theater in Kearney. And then every summer, coming back This past summer, we did a concert, what we call Concerts on the Creek, which are in Cambridge, at Becky and Becky's home with Dick. And so they have this fabulous, beautiful big room, and they have a nice piano. And so we've given concerts there, and they're wonderful. And of course, I managed to, get out of the pool just in time and dry off and grab my fiddle and go play. Or there's a golf course right down at the bottom of the hill, and so I have a lot of fun at the Concerts in the Creek. And the audience does too. They have a big meal right there and get to enjoy great music. So we've done many, many years of a couple concerts. That stopped during COVID, and then we added one concert this past summer, which was really wonderful to get back to it. So this is all part of figuring out how it works. Printing, web design, internet marketing, print marketing, rentals of music, purchasing music. These are all kind of things that go into the cost and having a budget. Then there's the things about concert production, the ticket takers that I mentioned, the stage setup, staffing. We were always our own stagehands. We've always done our own stagehanding, if that's a word. And I was always fine with that. I don't think formality was ever an issue with this group. I don't think that's the point. The point was to share music. Lots of times we don't parade onto the stage to wild applause. We just kind of sift up here, and we may already be seated when you arrive. And so there's a lot that I think is very personal. There's a lot of communication and talk between the audience and the players, which I've always really liked. Dress and deportment. Let's see. Black with style? Feeling. Black with feeling is what we're told to wear. So I think that means something has to be black. Ed's shirt would not be terribly uncommon from what you might wear on a typical concert night. And so it's been fun. It's less formal, and so that's just part of the things that maybe happen accidentally, but also are cultivated as we work on what kind of group we want to be. Concert programs. Who writes notes? What players are there? Do we have bios of the players? What kind of advertisers participate? Donor recognition and underwriting. She mentioned in this talk that she didn't end up giving, what is the average age of the person who attends your concerts, and what are their needs, what are their wants? A little more on that in a little bit. And then building relationships. I mentioned NET already. We've done live rehearsals that were open to the audience, which is a really interesting way to get to know the music and get to know the people who are playing it. Okay, and then some events that we've had over the years. In 2007 was the Train Project. Louis Leviticus was the driving force behind this very interesting program, which you perform. I wasn't involved because there wasn't a viola part, but there was a clarinet part, and you played it in several different places.
Yes, we kind of toured it around the state. I think we had 19 or 20 performances.
Wow.
And we did several performances at the university in Kimball Hall.
Was it Carson? Could it have been Carson?
Like I said, it's in
The Carson Theater? Because I went to it. I saw the show. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in addition to playing clarinet, my other job was to help Joe Holmquist with all the percussion equipment he had. So I was...
You were the head schlepper.
Yeah, I was his roadie.
Roadie.
So, and we would ride to whatever town we were going to in his pickup truck, and so that was always neat.
That's fun. So, yeah, you understand this. There is a very small world of people that actually have these sorts of things done for them, right? I remember I was setting up chairs and stands for a youth symphony concert or something, and someone said, "Don't you have people for this?" I am the people. It's what we do. You all know that. We we do a lot of work that would be lovely if someone else did for us, but that's just not the way it goes. And yes, moving percussion equipment, chairs and stands, music, all the things, setting up tables, all the things that you do when you love something like we do. You just do the work, and it's worth it. And the music makes it all worth it. So that was in 2007. Also in 2012, that was for the 10th anniversary. For the 15th anniversary, we did a project called Ashfall, which had to do with the fossil beds. And a whole thing was created by NET that you may have seen. And they did a special on it, a half-hour special where they intertwined music. Of course, they filmed us live, and then they went to the fossil beds and interviewed people, and they put this wonderful program together, which occasionally they still air. And you may think, oh, this is cool. When can I go to a performance? Well, it happened in 2012. Don't tell anyone. But Rusty Banks was the composer for that. Rusty was a guitarist and a composer, has written a lot of things for us over the years. That was a terrific project. Over the years, they produced the Beggar's Opera. They've worked, the chamber players have worked with the dance company. They've commissioned 25 works that have been performed over the years, including the Ashfall, including the Train project. So we've done music mentoring, like me getting my bicycle. We've been music in your space. We're going to places. The Red Dot card, funding for special programs. Apparently, Becky would even go, maybe some of the others too, I don't remember doing this myself, would go into the public schools and talk about what we're doing and do little mini performances. We played at Red Cloud. That's right. I remember prominently at Red Cloud. Many of us have done clinics with schools. Now, last thing I want to talk about is repertoire, because how do you program? And Becky has always gone by one of Lou Leviticus's firm ideas. If you knew Lou, he always said the firmest things with the smiliest face, or not. And here's what he said. You program very good and interesting things. Most of the people in your audience are smart and don't mind new things. But give us an anchor. Make us comfortable with something we can understand. If you finish with something challenging, start with other pieces we understand. Start with Beethoven or Mozart. Then give us something new. And Becky has always considered that to be her mode of operation. She's always remembered that. Now, we may not play Mozart's most famous piece or Beethoven's most famous piece, but we've given you the characters and the sounds that may be familiar to a lot of the people in our audiences, and then we can bear to give them music that they haven't heard. Sometimes we might not even like the music we're playing, or we might not all agree. But what's my favorite piece? It's the one I'm working on at the time. It has to be, right? Because we have to present this music as if it's the greatest thing ever written, no matter how we feel about it. That's just the art of performance. And so she's always gone by that directive. And I think it's worked for all of us. It keeps us all fresh. And have you played so-and-so a piece? No, let's do it. Has been kind of the thought process beside that. And I've always appreciated about this group. So you see our program. You should have a brochure of our season. And I hope you can make some of the events. Lindsay's playing with us this year, which is great. So anyway, there's not a lot of detail about people, but there is music detail, and you'll see some pretty great things on that list. Any questions about anything that either Ed or I could answer? Anything spark any thoughts about philosophy or how to have a group like this? Yeah.
Well, one thing I wanted to say is that there is at least least one other organization in town that presents chamber music, the Lincoln Friends of Chamber Music. And their thing is to bring in nationally known ensembles from around the country, which is great.
Yeah.
But the Nebraska Chamber players live here, and we're doing the best we can with what we got. It's usually pretty good.
Thank you, Ed. That's completely true. Yeah, the Lincoln Friends is a very valuable part of our community music. So, yes.
Yeah, my question is, so you mentioned that Becky was part of starting the organization and is still the heart and soul today. So what are you thinking in terms of leadership transition as, you know, you're getting into many, many years?
Wow, it's beautiful weather today, isn't it? Isn't it spectacular? I just love when summer turns to fall. I think you have to start a business meeting. If anyone is talking about that, I've not heard a word. And no one looks forward to that sort of thing.
Actually, Joyce Besh, our bassoonist, has taken over some of the duties that Becky has done in the past. So we're not.
Right. So Becky's not doing everything now. So Joyce is doing things like scheduling rehearsals, making sure we all have music, finding out when we're available, who's available for which concerts, things like that. So she's doing a lot of the grunt work, and that's a huge help for Becky. But yes, that's sheesh.
Well, just not because it has to happen, but eventually, with a long-standing organization, these are things that, you know, just come up. So I just wondered how you had thought about that.
Yeah, it would be disappointing to all of us if those of us in the ensemble who are aging slightly, like me, were to think that the organization would stop when we're done. That would be a tremendous disappointment. And I don't think that'll happen. But of course, yeah, we should be thinking about that sort of thing. It's an excellent question. And even though it is nice weather, yes, that was a very good question. Anything else? Okay, well, thank you. And I hope that you can get to a concert. But thanks for all you do to make the world a better and warmer place in this community and in the world. We make a difference, you know, right, in the lives of people. If we didn't, why are we doing this? Why are we teaching and making music? So thank you. I applaud you and admire you, and keep going. Just keep going. So thanks.
Thank you, Clark. I just had a couple things that I wanted to kind of call out that Clark had talked about and reflect for everyone. First, and I think Ed's the only one that's going to care about this, but Sam Williams, who lives in Iowa, is a flute player, and he arranged the sonata, Rebecca Clark sonata, for alto flute. So that is out there now. He performed it at the flute convention this last summer, and it won a newly published music competition 2 years ago, I believe. So I had never heard. It's one of those things where no. It's never heard of this composer before, and now twice in a 6-week period, I've now heard about Rebecca Clark and heard the story of this. So it was really wonderful. Anyway, so I recommend that. You talked a lot about just board management and everything, and we're always at LMTA looking for some board help. And if you think about nonprofit management stuff, you talked about all the things that go into that. If you talk to Anne, she's the executive director of Nonprofit Association of the Midlands. She says people call her almost every day. I want to start a nonprofit, and her first piece of advice is don't do it. Find another way, right? Think about partnerships. So, of course, these are really long-standing organizations that we have in our community, but we're always looking for partnerships and ways to work together because it does take a lot, right? Putting on these events, doing the performances, all these things, it takes a lot. I wanted to share 2 other things. One, you said 7% is ticket sales for Nebraska Chamber players. I was texting with Barbara Zock in the back to confirm, because when I worked at the Symphony, I couldn't quite, I knew it was around 20%. So for the Symphony, it's 18% right now is revenue that comes from ticket sales. I think people are usually really shocked at how low that number is. The industry average for a Symphony is 24%. So here in Lincoln, it's a lot lower. As you know, the ticket prices are rather low, and it is here too. With that, the Red Dot program is an eligible reimbursement expense for your MOP students. So those of us that teach for the Music Outreach Program, if you have a student, so it's $5 for the student and a caregiver combined total, and they can have that expense reimbursed by MOP. So those are things I wanted to say. We can take a few minutes before we transition to business meeting, which will be out there. So I think, yeah, we'll see you. We'll go. We have coffee and, yep. Thanks. I'll take a stack for students. Is that allowed?
Yes, you can have them all.